So they can, some people have passed the exam with our help in as little as 1 week, but other people need, a whole 6 months or a whole year or year and a half.
Before we get started with the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Global Training Center. As trade compliance professionals, you want to make sure that your procedures and documentation are completed as correctly as possible to avoid any delays and possible fines. We provide a range of trade compliance courses that will fit your needs. From in-person or web training to recorded on-demand courses, we can train one or even thousands on your team through your learning platform or on our portal. We can even customize a private session for your team. Go to globaltrainingcenter.com to find out more.
Hello, Lala. We're ready for another show, and I am. This is one of those where we're, had enough time where you start looking at you've gotten caught up from the holidays, you've gotten past the January stuff, you start looking at, now I've got to zero in on what is it I want to try and accomplish for the year, even though everybody tries to do New Year's resolutions, but it's a little bit further down the line. So with that, I will say that I keep looking at it going, okay, I'm going to be more disciplined this year to try and, stay and exercise, lose weight, whatever else I've got to get done. But how about you? What are you looking at? What's going on in your world right now?
Yeah, and we're getting ready for in-person trainings in several cities, and so we're busy now. I mean, again, you're right. I mean, we take December and January almost more or less those months off with regards to the in-person trainings, but February all the way up through November, that's all we do. So,
well, and that's one of those. Matter of fact, I'm getting excited about some of the conferences that we're going to be able to attend together, and actually do some more recordings and all of that, which was phenomenal. But that said, I will say that what we're going to talk about today and get a little excited about as far as people trying to better themselves, improve their career, position themselves with more credentials or build up more credentials for, if you will, their future career. So I'm going to be looking forward to this discussion, Lalo. So why don't you talk a little bit of what we're going to do today.
Yeah, well, we like to talk. On this show, we cover everything from learning and getting better at your trade regulations and what pitfalls and stuff like that. But we also do a lot, which I like, is career development, and that this show falls in that category with career development because at Global Training Center. So this is a very typical week for us. We get calls where, how do I get started in import-export? So we've got training for that. Other people call us and tell us, "Hey, I wanna step up my career, and what do I do? If is there a license or an accreditation or whatever, And so obviously, the only license that is available in this industry by the government anyway is the customs broker license, the CBP to be a licensed broker. And so I've invited this guest, Ruth Rodriguez, and Ruth Rodriguez, for anybody out there, is she's got well over 20 years experience, almost 25 years experience in teaching a course that prepares you for the broker exam. So she's got an amazing amount of knowledge and skills on this, and we'll talk to her about that. But she's also the wife of Oscar Gonzalez, who did our Christmas show, our Santa Claus show. Santa Claus is a smuggler show.
Oscar was hilarious. I hadn't thought about it. Like I said, is that he brought up the deal. If people think back, if you haven't seen that or listened to it, go back and it was one we aired the week of Christmas. But of how Santa Claus has a network with his agents out there representing him,
and the implied
contract. Yeah, the implied contract with payment through milk and cookies.
So that was great.
That was good.
Yeah. Oscar's really funny, but I'm nowhere near funny. So.
So everyone, this is Ruth Rodriguez, Andy, and so we can get a pick her brain on this broker exam. I do have a few things that I want to pick at as well, during the conversation. But for right now, welcome, Ruth. Thank you for joining us on this episode.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this.
Looking forward to it. I'll tell you, that's one of those things where on the broker's exam, I guess was surprised and still am on the number of or the percentage of people that successfully pass the test when it's given. It's very low. And what I think I have, when I was digging into it, the vast majority of people really don't prepare themselves for taking that test, and which is a mistake, obviously, because then people are falling by the wayside on that. So you spend all that time, and it's a marathon test too at that. So tell us about your broker prep course a little bit.
Sure. But first on the pass rate has been as low as 1.5%. Passing the exam. So in April 2012, 10 years ago, 1,367 people took the exam, only 20 passed. So that's the lowest since I've been teaching, and it's been as high as 45%. That was April 2020 when 900 people took the exam and 360 passed. So the pass rate fluctuates a lot, but on average, it's about a 20%. So 1 in 5 of the people pass the exam, and I think, and then you're right, they just don't prepare enough. But what we do with our course is we have a 90% pass rate, and we guarantee that people will pass. So if they don't pass on the first try, we'll stick with them through the second and third and whatever number. Most people pass on first or second try, but there's some of our students that need more hand-holding than that. So we let them come unlimited use of the course until they pass. So we have an online course is one of the features. The other feature is that I do a weekly class, 5 to 9 p.m. after work, every week of the year. And then we also have a 5-day boot camp every month of the year. Those boot camps can be in person or via Zoom. So that we try to alternate.
Right.
The weekly classes are via Zoom because I can't travel every week to a different city. So they're all via Zoom. And then we also have tutoring every day, 1 hour per student per day. So you go online, you go onto this sheet, you put your name. I want a tutor tomorrow at 3 or Wednesday at 4, whatever. And then a tutor shows up magically on your screen at a designated time and helps you for a whole hour.
So let me ask you this, though, is like with all the different options that you're providing, Ruth, and I think it's fantastic on that. It's so for basically in preparing for the broker's exam, as far as what you're offering right now, you just went through a whole host of such flexible different mediums to give in person to online to, weekly classes throughout the year to a boot camp and all that. Do you recommend I've seen a lot of courses where it's like this crash course. It's a week-long course. You're there every day for 8 hours a day. It's almost like, it's such an intense teaching thing. Do you recommend that versus the weekly, or do you think the weekly one is a little bit better, or is there a particular it's got to be personal preference. I get that, but sometimes it's usually what's better versus what somebody has time to do.
Right. So I recommend that you do it all, that you come to a boot camp every month of the year, that you come to class every week of the month of the year, that you come to tutoring 1 hour per day, every day, that you go to the online course, you do all that every day. But, most people can't do all that. They don't have 5 days every month of the year to go off to a boot camp. So people do what they can and what works for them. So I recommend they do it all. But most people don't do it all. The ones that do a lot, I always think, okay, I know I'm going to be sending her a congratulation email 2 months from now, because they're coming every week. They're coming every boot camp. They're coming to every tutoring. I know those are the ones that are going to do the best. So that's why I recommend doing it all. But I know people can't do it all, you know?
Well, you've got to be very disciplined in it as far as the test and whatnot and preparing for it. The test is not so much memory, although there's a tremendous amount that you do need to memorize, but it's more of your, I guess, problem and discernment and all that. Of you look at a question, you identify what's relevant versus what's irrelevant. And then you have to go and have the skills of where to look for the answer.
Right.
And do that expediently, right?
Yes, that's correct. The very few things that you're asked to memorize, I would say some formulas for calculating duties and transaction value. Maybe you should memorize those, and maybe you should memorize most of the highly tested parts of the CFR and maybe the highly tested chapters of the HTSUS. But the rest, you're right. It's a matter of knowing where to look. There's 7,000 pages here. So there's 4,000 in the HTSUS and 3,000 in the CFR, probably more now, maybe close to 8,000. But nobody can read and memorize all of them. It's just a matter of tabbing your books, knowing where to go look for the answers, having the skills and the experience. This is why we do practice exams. And this is why we, review a lot of the materials as thoroughly as we can for the particular question. We're also exam based. So people out there are under the misimpression that all we do is memorize 800 questions and you can pass the exam. But we don't. We do those 10 80 question exams so that you can have an idea of what's on the exam. How do you do it each question in 2 minutes or 6 minutes? How do you get ready, get your books ready, get the experience down so you can finish in 4 hours. So yeah, it's some memorization, but mostly it's a matter of knowing how to work these books.
Well, and here's the other question is, in today's world, there's so much electronic and all, do you recommend sticking with the, if you want to call it the old school, with the almost like the parts book? It's like you've got the HTS and the CFRs and all that, is that you've got a hard copy book and you tab it all out, or do you recommend using a laptop with the digital versions?
Well, they don't let you use a laptop, so that's out. But they do provide the electronic materials on the exam. I don't recommend, I know people do that, and I'm assuming some people pass that way, but none of my students use the electronic version of their materials because it is so bad, it is so slow, it has so many glitches that usually they end up having to refund everybody their money. So I don't recommend it. And the people that don't get the memo from me, because I have over 100 students, there are some that don't get the memo and do it electronically, always have a negative experience. So I do not recommend it. It'll eventually work, but right now it's not.
So going to that, Ruth, I guess we can talk about that, because previously the test was analog. I mean, it was handwritten, right? You bubble sheets and all that, right? And recently, I guess since the pandemic, I guess it went electronic, and there's a lot of challenges in that conversion, right? And when they went to that,
it went electronic before the pandemic, and there was horrible experiences. I was in that first group of students who took the exam. I had already passed it once, but I wanted to be a guinea pig. I wanted to be one of the first people that took it electronically. Well, I took it in New York, and it's a 4-hour exam or 4.5-hour exam. And it took me 11 and a half hours to get out of that room because there was so many crashes, glitches, problems. They wouldn't even admit the problem until an hour into the exam that, yes, it's not you, it's the whole country that's having this problem. And so it was down for hours, and they wouldn't, I kept raising my hand saying, you got to tell customs that you got to give people additional time, because we're sitting here looking at as a blank screen. And they finally gave you half an hour more after 2 hours of my complaining. And then they give you another extra half hour, but they had to go around the room for each of the 200 people in the room and reconfigure the computer. So that took another 2 hours. So yeah, I wasn't out. I got there at 7 a.m. and I didn't leave till 6:30. Very
That
long
is
day.
absolutely crazy. Well, for in looking at it, so coming back, because taking the broker's exam, it's a marathon. You've got to
Yes.
time yourself. You've got to pace yourself. You can't spend too much time on a question.
Right.
You've got to, go through and all that. Is there a methodology that you
Yes.
consider like in going through and taking this test?
Yes. And if you will stop recording that, I'll be glad to explain it.
Hey, not a problem there. It's like, hey, if you want to know more, go take the test.
No,
or
I'm
take
kidding.
the game.
I'm kidding. I can summarize it. We recommend, Customs recommends that you spend 3 minutes per question. So 3 minutes times 80 is 240 minutes, which is 4 hours, and they give you 4.5. I don't think that formula works. And my students take 2 minutes per non-classification question and 6 minutes per classification question, because the classification questions take longer. So if you spend 3 minutes on all 80, you're not going to be spending enough time on classification and too much time on the easier ones.
Well,
So
and
I
if you're
recommend that.
not used to if you're not used to classifying, I mean that's right there can eat you alive, and invariably the questions are such that you'll look at it, you'll go to classify it, but you better doggone know your chapter notes and section notes, because oh my gosh, it'll trip you up. So
yeah, you can't read 11 pages of notes in 6 minutes.
no,
So
you
you've
got
got
to
to
know
read
that
all
stuff.
those notes before the exam day, and you're just quickly looking at them in the 6 minutes you have to see if anything applies to your question. And we have developed steps on how to answer classification questions, steps on how to answer trade agreement qualification questions, and steps on how to answer general questions. So, and we practice it 800 times over the course of the 6 days or 6 weeks or 6 months that you've signed up. Because our course we're starting February 3rd and we're ending March 27th. It's year round. Every week there's a class, every month there's a boot camp, every day there's tutoring. So it's like a merry-go-round. Is it a merry-go-round? Yeah. You jump on when you're ready and get on, and then jump off.
Carousel or merry-go-round, either
carousel,
one.
Yeah. So yeah. So they can, some people have passed the exam with our help in as little as 1 week, but other people need, a whole 6 months or a whole year or year and a half.
And
well, there's so much involved in that, is that if you are a newbie, in other words, you've been thrown into a logistics area or something, or for whatever reason, you don't have a whole lot of experience in the import, export business. And this is more, brokers are more focused on imports. But as a whole, all of that to say is you better take your time. If you're experienced, it's a little different. I think your ramp up time probably is shorter. But the point being is it would be better to be more disciplined. Probably that weekly class would be ideal for somebody who's brand new, so that they're able to digest what you're covering and apply what they're learning through that next week.
Hey everyone, we're getting ready for another annual ICPA event coming up the week of March 12th in Orlando, Florida. If you have been thinking of attending any of the ICPA conferences, this is the one you should not miss. There will be more sessions than any other conference, with a guaranteed sellout, so hurry and get your tickets today. We are also excited to share that Simply Trade podcast will be in attendance, and we want you to be part of our show. Listen to episodes 14, 15, and 16 to find out why you can't miss this conference.
Yeah, and I've found that people who are not in the business actually do better than people who are in the business, because the people who are not in the business, they know they have to stick their heads in the book. They know they're going to have to be there 4 hours a week and come to mini boot camps and come to tutoring. The people who are in the business, well, I know how to do that. I've been doing it for 20 years. How hard can it be? I'll study a little bit. And then they realize, oh, wait, It's not how it's done in
Right.
Seattle. It's not how it's done by this port director. It's what the regs say. So yeah, I've had people I've had one guy that was in a convenience store. He found out about this and said, "Hey, do you think I can do it?" I'm like, "Sure, I can help you." And in 2 months, he passed the exam. His wife
Fantastic.
was a bank president, so she let him quit his job at the convenience store and supported them both while he stuck his head in his book for 2 months.
And
That's
Ruth,
great.
And there's people from healthcare too that never done this and they do what great.
and to that point, on people who are not in the business or even in the business and they take the exam, once you pass it, and you keep that license unless you do something obviously fraudulent or et cetera, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but what I was going to get at
Correct.
is, last month or a few episodes ago, we had the folks over from NCBFAA on the show talking about the new regulations of customs proposed, continuing education. You know how that's coming
111.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what are your opinions on that? I mean, do you think? I mean, obviously, I'm hoping you're going to say it's a good idea. You're in education, but I'm just thinking of brokers that passed their exam 25 years ago and maybe are just hanging out and maybe not keeping up. I mean, I just felt that was so I'm just curious to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea. Lawyers, doctors, hairdressers, plumbers, they all need to keep up with their license with training. So I don't see why brokers should be exempt. They've been talking about it for 20 plus
Yeah.
years.
Right.
I agree that there should be training. So I'm glad they're finally doing it. You don't keep your license forever. There is some paperwork to do, and you have to do it every 3 years.
3
And if you
years.
don't,
Right.
you lose your license.
Right.
You lose your license.
Right.
I have a student right now that is just not licensed anymore because they didn't get that report in.
Oh,
So luckily, that student's close to retiring, so they're not probably going to take the exam. But yeah, I agree. I think they should be doing. I think it's a good idea to do training. We always recommend Global Training Center for training, but we are also doing, continuing training for the people who have gone through our course can
Right.
continue using our course for training to meet up with those hours. Now, we haven't been certified. Nobody has because they haven't done that yet.
Right.
But yeah, we hope to get certified, and I think it's an excellent idea.
And go ahead, Andy, and I'll follow up after you're done.
Well, I was just going to say, when you're looking for a prep course, and as you're reviewing those out there, and if you decided that you want to prepare for a broker's exam, because first off, if you want to take the broker's exam, prepare for it. Don't just assume if you've been in the industry or something, or you'll just be able to figure it out. But you hit on where one of the key things to me to look for is the pass rate. If you've got a 90% pass rate off the first go round and whatnot, that's excellent. And then being able, if you don't pass it, following up. The other thing is if you don't pass the first go round, don't let it sit. You've got all that
Right.
knowledge and all that time spent in there. Stay with it and go for the next
I agree.
test, so that you don't lose that time, because to ramp back up, and then you focus on what you obviously missed and zero in on that and go from there. But
I agree. I have a couple of stories on that. Back before the pandemic, when we had a boot camp every month, I had two different students on 2 different years, unrelated to each other. On the first day of the boot camp, I have a diagnostic 4-hour exam. So these two people, again, not related, different years, different boot camps, they show up to the boot camp on the first day after not studying for 6 months, because they were like, I need a break. I'll come back 6 months later. So they came back 6 months later. They passed the exam on the first day. So they're like, this is a real exam? You mean I could have just taken this real exam and passed it? I'm like, yeah, that's why I tell you don't skip any exams. Because like you said, you have to start over. You have to, revamp. You have to get new books. It's just keep going. Even if you failed it miserably, just keep going, because if you wait 6 months or 6 years, then you have to start over. The exam changes, the books change, everything. So yeah,
So
I agree with that advice.
you're talking about these two people. They took the exam that just was administered by customs prior to that boot camp, right? Oh no!
And they passed on the
Oh
first
no!
day.
They must have been kicking
Even though they
themselves.
hadn't studied in 6 months, they said, give me 6 months, I need a break. One of them said, I need a year break. The other one said, I need 6 months break. And they just wanted to kick themselves on the first day because they could have just taken that exam and passed it.
Yeah.
Also, it fluctuates so much, so if you take a 1% pass rate exam and you don't pass, and then you skip the next one and that one has 30%, and then you go to the next one and that's 15%, you may not pass the 15%, but you could have passed maybe the 30 or 45%. So yeah, I do not recommend people skip. And some people, I have lots of complaints about customs, but my one big complaint right now is that they haven't graded the April 2022 appeals. To me, it is totally unfair and so wrong, and it's probably unconstitutional, because if the regulations say that you have a right to appeal, and if you don't pass an appeal, you have a right to reappeal. If you don't grade the appeals before the next exam, to me, it's like saying, and I said this in the middle of we used to have a group, we starting up this group again of instructors, and they all laughed at me, but I'm going to say it again anyway. To me, if you don't grade the appeals, it's like being on death row and this U.S. Supreme Court saying, sure, we'll look at your appeal, but let's execute you first. and I said that in front of customs, and they all laughed, and the instructors laughed. And they said, well, nobody's ever compared the customs broker exam to death penalty. I said, the point is, you're not
killing the career.
You're killing your career, and you're not following your regs. The regs say that you have a right to appeal, and if you don't grade it, then where does the right to appeal go? It goes in the trash. So right now they are 9 months behind on grading appeals.
And
so
I'm
they
sure what's happened is that they've had to divert resources from so many areas of customs to the southern border and different areas like that. So it's in trying to keep cargo moving.
Maybe, but that doesn't make customs okay in taking away an administrative right that a student has.
Right.
It's a right that you have in the regs, the right to appeal. And if you don't grade it, you're taking away a very important right, because like some people, my students, miss the April exam by 1 point. And so they appeal, and they don't take the April exam thinking, I just need 1 point. I have this great lawyer helping us. This firm has been doing it forever. Of course, I'm going to pass by appeal. But so they don't take the October exam. Now it's already January or near February, and what are they going to wait another year to grade their appeals? This has never happened in the 24 years that I've been teaching this. 23 years I've been teaching this. Never happened.
And for those that don't know about the broker exam or the process, I guess just as a note, the test is administered by CBP every April and every October. That's what Ruth is referring to. So last April of 2022, that's what she's talking about, that they haven't been regraded per se. And I'm assuming obviously not October. I mean, if they haven't done April,
right.
So yeah.
No, we just filed the October. The October appeals were just due January 6th. So I don't know. Are they going to take another 9 months to grade those? That means 2 exams go by before you even hear from whether you pass an appeal or not, which is totally unfair. And they can't follow my advice, is keep taking the exam, because why keep taking the exam if you might pass an appeal? And Lala, you should start, and I can maybe help you find somebody, but one of the most common questions I get about education is there any class on how to do entries?
Right.
And I have a person for you too that can do it.
Okay.
But you can add that to your curriculum, because that's one of the questions I get the most. I'm starting my brokerage, but I've never done an entry. How do I do it?
Right.
Yeah.
Ruth, well, let me ask you this then, because we're going to need to start wrapping things up here, but if somebody's interested in this, what do you usually recommend them to do here, as far as saying, should they prep some? Should they just go ahead and sign up for a prep course, or should they start go ahead and get their regs and information and start going through it first, or what do you recommend?
Well, no, I don't recommend anybody do it on their own. Like we said earlier, you really need somebody to help you with this. I have a lot of people who've come to our course because they did it on their own first, or they went through several other courses and then end up going, okay, finally I have to just do this, the best one out there. I tried all the off the shelf, the 3 days here, 4 weeks in a row. I need the year-round one. And so, yeah, we recommend that you start with us. We will provide all of the books you need for the first exam and all the tools you need, like the Rainbow Tariff. We have a patent pending tool that we call a Rainbow Tariff. It doesn't teach you how to classify, but it helps you read the HTSUS easier than if you didn't have it. So we have a patent pending on it. We invented it, and nobody has that except for our students. And we don't sell it. You can get it only through us. So, we give you all the tools that you need for the first exam. I would not start reading. I mean, maybe if you had a law degree or a master's degree, or, something that where you're like really disciplined and you don't need help, or you took a course, 3 years ago and you almost passed by 1 point, maybe they wouldn't need my help, but
Well,
I think
let me
everybody else.
interject in here, because one of the things, because a lot of folks will they're trying to save some money or think they can do it on their own, and I'll use this analogy, is that to become a licensed broker, in preparing for that, and again, we're just talking about being able to get the credential, but you are literally looking forward to achieve a milestone type item in a person's career as far as a licensed broker. To achieve that, you've got to be performing superbly in preparing for that, as we just said. Well,
Yeah, you can do it on your own. It's just I can save you a lot of heartache and headache. You're going to be reading these regs, and you don't understand why. I had one student who said, I read them over and over, and my hair was falling out. I would read it 6 times, and I still didn't get it. And finally went to the Best Custom Broker course, and I got the help that I needed. So I tell students, yes, we cost money, but you can get there on a cross country on a bike, or you can get there on a plane, or you can get there and we're the plane. We can get you there fast. And if you have, several weeks or several months to waste on your own, frustrated with nobody to help you, go ahead, do the long way, but we can get you fast. You want to get there on fast or slow, and we can get you there much faster. And we're there 1 hour every single day to tutor you. And the class is available, the courses, the online things available 24/7. We also help people with the appeals. Other courses, they say, good luck, here's the 1-page letter you got from customs. They don't really help with appeals. We're lawyers, so we're really good at helping people pass by appeal as well.
Great.
Well, I think what we're going to do is we're going to be posting in our show notes. So for our listeners, if you're interested in that, look at the show notes here that we've got. We're going to be posting the links to Ruth Rodriguez's, not only her bio, but her contact information and information about her courses, as well as then the Global Training Center, the courses that are offered there, and the combination thereof should set everybody up for success here. So,
yeah, and when you do that, if you're those of you who are listening, if you mention this podcast, I'll give you a discount that's not found nowhere on the
Great.
online course. Yeah,
Ruth,
all you see on the online course is a full price, and if you mention the podcast, I'll give you a discount.
Nice.
Listen, folks, I greatly appreciate it. Notice, mention Simply Trade podcast. That would be we. Thank you on behalf of our listeners. That is generous. Appreciate that.
And that was unexpected, but thank you. Well, Ruth, I just wanted to say thank you for joining us. I'm sorry, Andy, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, Ruth, you've been fantastic.
Well, thank you both. This has been great fun. Good questions, nice, thoughtful ones, and I'm not surprised. I worked with Lala before. He's really good. And Andy, it's great spending an hour with you, so appreciate that. Good questions as well. Thank you so very much for your interest.
Thank you all. Thank you. And we'll, again, check our show notes. Ruth's information will be on there, and we'll definitely have you back on and follow up with a bunch of other stuff related to the broker exam. Thank you, Ruth.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby excluded.